Greetings, math fans. All right, so this is day one of chapter one. All right, so we're going to learn about 4 or 5 different topics here, and they're really pretty simple. Some of the things are review, and some of the things maybe might be new. So the first thing I want to talk about, and by the way, this kind of mirrors exactly what your worksheet is going to look like, worksheet 1. Okay, so as long as you're watching this, you're going to be good to go with the worksheet, which means you'll know how to do the quiz and the test and final exam. Okay, so let's talk about something called numbers that are rational. So rational, we'll use this word rational. Rational numbers and irrational numbers. Okay, so let me just give you some examples to really the best describe what a rational number is. First of all, a rational number, and I'll actually write some words out here. A rational number is basically any fraction. So it could be 1/2, it could be 273 over 5,968. Okay, in other words, it could be, as long as it's a fraction, any fraction, it's a rational number. Okay, so any fraction, a decimal can be a decimal. But it has to be like a fixed decimal. In other words, it can be 13.5, negative 12.89763. As long as it ends, it is a rational number. Okay? If it repeats, so if I had like 12.375, 375, and I'm going to put a little bar over that. If that repeats, and you can see 375, 375, 375, 375 already keeps going, that's a rational number. Okay? If it doesn't repeat, it's an irrational number. Okay, so let's talk about what an irrational number is, and there are actually a lot less irrational numbers. So remember, like perfect squares, you guys should know like 9 is a perfect square, because if I take the square root of 9, I get 3. So the square root of 9 is a perfect square. That is a rational number. So let me just write that out for rational numbers. So square root of 9 is a rational number. Square root of 25, which square root of 25 is 5. That's a rational number. So these you can even type in your calculator, guys, which we're going to talk about for the next unit. Okay, but if you can type it in your calculator and you get a whole number, like I said, the square root of 64, it's 8. Okay, that's a rational number. But here's an irrational number, the square root of 60. Okay, so square root of 60, if you would try to type that in your calculator, in fact, I'm going to do it right now on my calculator because it's going to give you something like 7 point something, but the square root of 60 is 7.745. I'm just write out 7.745966692. So you can see what's going on is there, and then it keeps going. Okay, that's important that it keeps going, but there's nothing repeating here. It's all different numbers. Okay, so that's an irrational number. The value of pi, if you guys know what pi is, you learn it in geometry. 3.141599265. That one keeps going as well, and nothing is repeated here. That's an irrational number. So kind of the only things that are irrational numbers are square roots that are not perfect squares. So again, this is not a perfect square. Okay, that's an irrational number, and like I said, pi is a good example of not an irrational number. Okay, so notice that, like I said, nothing repeats. Well, here it does repeat. 12.375, 375, 375. That repeats, so that's a rational number. Okay, even negatives don't matter. If it's negative square root of, it could be 36. So that's just -6, no big deal. Okay, but again, if I put a negative here and I say the negative square root of 10, if I type in my calculator again, the square root of 10, doesn't matter, there's a negative on the outside, I get 3.16. So write that negative 3.16. That keeps going though. 22227766. In other words, it keeps going. Right? Doesn't stop, and it doesn't repeat anything. Okay? So that's what you need to know for irrational and irrational. Super easy. Okay? So that's the first thing. let's try a couple other things. So next thing I'm going to do is we're just going to talk about adding and subtracting numbers. Okay, that's pretty easy. Okay, so when I talk about adding and subtracting numbers, we have two categories here, guys. So this is going to be, I'm just going to actually say add. Okay, and the only reason I'm going to say add is because we'll say add and subtract, because they're really under one category. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to have the same signs. That's our first category. And these are our two examples. Same signs are 5 plus 3 or negative 5 minus 3. See, same sign. So this is really a positive 5 here, right? So 5 plus 3 and negative 5 minus 3. Now, everyone and their brother knows how to do the top one, I hope. Okay? 5 plus 3 is 8. That's like super easy. The bottom is a little more challenging because it's not that necessarily easy to do all these negatives here. So here's the rule when you have the same sign. So I can write a rule here. If you have the same sign, you add the positive parts together, which everybody knows how to do. Okay, so that's our first step. Add the positive parts together, and the second step is use the sign of the bigger number. That's it. Okay, so the first one, again, that's really easy. The same signs, you add the positive parts together. Well, they're both positive, so 5 plus 3 is 8. And what's the sign of the 5? It's positive, right? So the answer is positive 8. Okay, for the second one, it's the same thing. You add the positive parts together. So 5 plus 3 is 8. And what's the sign of the bigger number? Well, of course, it's negative. So the answer to this problem is negative 8. It's that easy. Okay? Super easy. So let's do different signs. Or we can say opposite signs. Okay, so let's use the same numbers here. We'll say 5 minus 3 or negative 5 plus 3. So notice this is a positive 5 and a negative 3. And this is a negative 5 and a positive 3. So now this is what our rule is going to be. Because they're different signs, you're going to subtract the big number minus the small number, which everybody can do. It's like really easy. And then that's the first step. And the second step is use the sign of the bigger number. That's the same as this guy right here. So use the sign of the bigger number. Okay? So what we're going to do is, again, use, when I say subtract the big and the small, this is the positive values of that. We're always subtracting the positive values. It's always easier. Subtract the positive values of the big minus the positive value of the small. Super easy. So if I see a 5 and a negative 3, I know they're opposite signs. So I go, oh, big minus small. So 5 minus 3 is 2. And what's the sign of the bigger number? Well, the sign of the bigger number is positive. It's 5. So the answer is positive 2. Which you guys knew that. 5 minus 3 is 2, right? Okay, it's pretty easy. Let's do the bottom one. Negative 5 plus 3. Okay, so again, you subtract the big minus the small. So 5 minus 3 is 2. What's the sign of the bigger number? Negative. And that's your answer. See, it's really easy, guys. So the only difference between these is, again, if it's the same sign, that means you add the positive values together. If it's a different sign, that means you subtract. Okay, subtract the positive. Subtract the positive parts. Okay, always big minus small, because you don't know how to do small minus big. It's always the biggest minus smallest. Okay, so remember, same sign, you add together and use the big sign. Different signs, you subtract, and then use the sign of the bigger number, and that's what you do. Okay, so I want to do a couple problems here. I actually want to do a bunch of problems here with you guys, because it really is pretty easy. But you just kind of have to memorize this. And plus, you're going to be able to use a calculator here in a day or so. I'm just kind of trying to show you a little bit by hand. So 7 minus 9. Opposite sign, right? You guys should just throw that out there. Opposite sign, so opposite sign means you subtract. So that means it's 9 minus 7, which is 2. What's the sign of the bigger number? Negative. What's your answer? It's pretty easy. How about negative 7 plus 9? It's almost the same thing. So it's opposite signs. So 9 minus 7 is 2. What's the sign of the bigger number? Positive. The answer is 2. What? That's easy. That's it. Okay. What about negative 4 minus 5? Same sign. What do? You add. 4 plus 5 is 9. 4 plus 5 is 9. What's the sign of the bigger number? Negative. The answer is negative 9. Okay. I mean, addition is easy, right? If I said 3 plus 8, you don't even have to do anything. But I can still use the rule. Same sign. Add the bigger numbers, or add the numbers together. 3 plus 8 is 11. What's the sign of the bigger number? Positive. The answer is 11. I mean, everyone knows how to do that one. That's easy. This one's not so easy. This one's not necessarily easy, and this one's not necessarily easy. So you got to kind of use the rule. Same sign, add. Opposite sign, subtract. Always use the sign of the bigger number. That's all it is. Okay, so same, let me write this out here. Same sign, add, opposite sign, subtract, and sign of the bigger number. Sign of big number. That's all I do. Okay, so let's just try a couple more. Let's do 1 minus 7. Opposite signs. 7 minus 1, bigger minus small, is 6. What's the sign of the bigger number? Negative. The answer is negative 6. Okay. Negative 3 minus 5. Opposite sign. So 5 plus 3 is 8. What's the sign of the bigger number? It's negative. The answer is negative 8. Okay, so that is adding and subtracting. I think that's pretty easy. Yeah, it's pretty easy. Okay, so let's do multiplication and division. Okay, so multiplication is pretty easy, and actually they're both pretty easy. If you have the same sign, so same sign, your answer is going to be positive. And if you have opposite sign, your answer is going to be negative. That's just so easy. So if I said 3 times 5, you guys should know 3 times 5 is 15. Or negative 3 times negative 5 is positive 15. Right? Double negative or double positive gives you 15. So that's the same sign, right? And then opposite sign is going to be, negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. Or 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. Okay? Pretty easy, right? That is multiplication. And so division, well, first of all, you guys, we did multiplication, right? I said 3 times 5. You guys know it can also be 3 times 5. Right? You can either put 2 parentheses like this, or you can put a dot in between. That's multiplication. That's just kind of important to know that. Okay? So let's do division. And division can be, if I said 28 divided by 7, or 28 divided by 7. These are the same thing. A fraction and division are the same thing. So 28 divided by 7 is 4, and 28 divided by 7 is 4, right? So it's the same rule, guys. These are both positive, or negative 28 over negative 7, or negative 28 divided by negative 7. Same sign, it's also 4. Okay? But if I change one of the signs, negative 28 over 7, or 28 divided by negative 7. If one of them is negative, then it's a negative answer, so it's negative 4. Right? So negative 28 divided by 7, or 28 divided by negative 7. Right? If one of them is negative, The answer is negative. If they're both positive or both negative, the answer is positive. Okay, you got to know that. Very, very, very important. Okay? All right, so that's not bad, right? So that's a little multiplication. And again, you could use your calculator, but just to kind of get an idea what to do, that's really not bad at all. Okay, so let's talk about absolute value. So absolute value is basically having these bars here. And if I said absolute value of -3, what it does is it always makes it positive. Always, always, always. So the answer is 3. So the absolute value of +3, please don't tell me it's -3, it also makes it positive. No matter what's inside, this is always going to make it positive. Always, 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 always. Now, something on the outside might make it negative. For example, if I said negative absolute value of -3, what you're going to do is this is going to make it +3. But then you got to deal with this on the outside because that's not part of the absolute value. So my answer for that one is -3. So the absolute value makes it positive, but then you got to do everything on the outside. Okay? So here's another good example. If I said absolute value of 5 minus 8. Please don't do the absolute value of -8. You're going to do everything inside of here first. So you're going to say 5 minus 8, which if you know, it's opposite signs. So I say 8 minus 5 is 3. And then it's the the sign of the bigger number is negative, so it's -3. So this just gives you -3, and now I take the absolute value of -3, which gives me 3. Okay, so you do again everything inside here first, then you take the absolute value, and then you do anything on the outside if there's a positive, negative, or whatever it is. Okay. So let's do a couple more problems here. Absolute value of -4 minus 7. Again, I'm not going to do anything until I do this inside of here. -4 minus 7. So basically it's 7 plus 4, because remember, it's same sign. So we add them together, we get 11. What's the sign of the bigger number? It's negative, so there it's negative. So this is -11. So only put the absolute value, and we have -11. What's the absolute value of -11? 11. Okay? Pretty straightforward, right? Okay, as opposed to a problem like this, absolute value of -4 minus absolute value of -7. That looks kind of complicated. But again, guys, please do what's inside the absolute value first. What's the absolute value of -4? Is 4. So write it. What's the absolute value of -7? It's 7. Write it. That negative is not inside the absolute value, so you put it outside. And now you do the rest of your work. 4 minus 7, opposite signs. So 7 minus 4 is 3. The sign of the bigger number is negative. So the answer to this problem is -3. It looks a little complicated. It's a little bit of work, but as long as you do everything in the absolute value, and then do the absolute value, and then do the rest of the problem, you're good to go. Okay? So let's do another one here. Absolute value, or negative absolute value of 7 minus 4. Okay? Inside the absolute value, 7 minus 4 is 3. Absolute value 3 is 3. And then you got the negative on the outside, so the answer is -3. So if I did this, absolute value of 4 minus 7. So what's 4 minus 7? Well, 7 minus 4 is 3, and the sign is negative, so it's -3. So this is what I get. Okay, what's the absolute value of -3? 3. The negative state, I haven't done anything to that negative. Don't take the absolute value of it because it's not inside the absolute value brackets. And so then my answer is, final answer is -3. Okay, so really you can have two kinds of problems. Here, let's actually do, I gotta do one more here. How about this one? Negative the absolute value of -7. Okay, remember, inside the absolute value first, what's the absolute value of -7? Is 7. And then that negative comes in the outside, and the answer is -7. Okay, so a couple different kind of problems you can have here, guys. I can have just, let's say, absolute value of -6. I can have the absolute value of 6. I can have the absolute value of 9 minus 11. And I can have the absolute value of -9 minus absolute value of -11. There's so many different problems I can do. One where it's all underneath it, one each separate, like that. So it's pretty easy to do it. Let's just do these guys, okay? So let me get rid of these little circles I just drew here. Okay, so absolute value of -6 is just 6. Absolute value of 6 is just 6. 9 minus 11, what is it? If you do your work, it's -2. Absolute value of -2 is 2. Okay, this one, what's the absolute value? I don't do anything with this negative yet. Absolute value of -9 is 9. Absolute value of -11 is 11. So 9 minus 11, absolute values are gone. 9 minus 11 is -2. Okay? Really not bad, but you just gotta know what you're doing. Okay? All right, so that's absolute value. And I got one more thing to show you guys. This is turning words into math equations. So rewriting, or let me write writing words, or writing, words into math equations. Okay, writing words into math equations. So if I said 3 more than 2 times a number, some of you might say, oh, 3 more, more means add. So 3 more than 2 times a number. So 2, if I call a number x, so 3 more than 2x. Now, the way I really want you to write it, guys, is I really want you to write it as this, 2x plus 3. I want you to put the variable first. Okay? And you'll see why, because when we do less or subtracting, it's much easier. It really is. So 3 more, this is what it says, 3 more than 2 times the number. Okay? So let's try another one here. Let's do 5 more than half a number. So I want you to say 1/2 x and 5 more. That's easy. Now the hard part, I think, is if I said 7 less than 4 times the number. So what kids want to do is they want to do it just the way they look at it, and they want to say 7 minus 4x. And you know what I'm going to do? Boo. That's not the right answer. That's not 7 less than 4 times the number. If I said, think about it logically, if I said, hey, you're 10 years less than my age, wouldn't you subtract 10 from my age? This one's saying 7 less than 4 times the number. Wouldn't you subtract 7 from 4x? And that's exactly what you need to do. This is the answer. It's 7 less than that number, than the 4 times the number. So 4x minus 7. That's why I want you guys to write it this way for adding, because then when you do subtraction, you're not going to get it wrong. And you're not going to do this, which is not good. Okay, so 7 less than 4 times the number is that. Okay? So if I, there's a couple more here. If I said 9 less than 1/4 of a number. Okay, what do? You say 1/4 x and 9 less than that. That's your answer. So 8 more than 6 times the number. So 8 more than 6 times the number. So here it is, 6x, and it's 8 more than that. Okay? It's pretty easy, guys. So that is basically worksheet 1 with no calculator. Okay, and then the next lesson is going to be using your calculator. Okay? So that should be it, math fans. You have an outstanding day. Adios. Goodbye.